begin with a very short act of worship, and Joe Morling, who's one of our trustees, is going to join me for that, and we invite you to be part of that. And at one point we're going to sing Jesu Tawa Pano. I hope most of you know that. The words will appear on screen magically at some, or rather in the chat, I think the words will appear if you don't know them, and we invite you to sing along when we get to that point. So we come together in worship. Arise, shine, your light has come.
Praise God for the coming light.
Get ready, stay awake, your hope is near.
Praise God for the coming hope.
Rejoice, rejoice, your joy will be complete.
Praise God for the coming joy.
Jesu tawa pano, Jesu tawa pano, Jesu tawa pano, tawa pano musita regnum. Jesu tawa pano, Jesu tawa pano, Jesu tawa pano, tawa pano musita regnum. And so a time of prayer. Let us pray. In time, you came among us, God of all the universe. Bound by restrictions of time and place, yet full of promise, joy, optimism, seeing the opportunities and possibilities of true humanity.
In time, you come among us, God of all the universe, ever again catching us unawares in the midst of so much frantic preparation, showing the opportunities and possibilities of overcoming in humanity.
In time, you will come among us, God of all the universe, speaking your word of judgment, yet full of grace, truth, compassion, sensing the opportunities and possibilities of reviving our humanity. God,
you come amongst us, just and in time.
Amen. So we're going to take a little bit of time now for the next 20 minutes or so to introduce ourselves to you. And the way we're going to do that is that I think there are 8 members of the council here. There might just be 9. We're not sure if Phyllis is joining us from the United States, who's one of our trustees, but it's about 4 o'clock in the morning where she is. So we're not quite sure if she's coming or not at this point. Oh, I see a text that tells me Phyllis is here, so she will join us. There are 9 members of the council then, and we're each going to introduce ourselves in this way. First of all, I'll do it, and then I'll be asking each person to tell us a little bit about who they are, and then a little bit about what experience they bring to the council and its work. And then thirdly, I'm going to ask them to tell us 2 things that they're passionate about. I hope that one of those will be something serious that they're passionate about, and the other might be a little more light-hearted, but they might both be serious. We'll see what happens depending on the answers that folk bring to that. So first of all, Let me tell you a little bit about who I am, Martin Scott. I was born in Lanarkshire, in Motherwell, and I studied music, first of all, in Glasgow, what used to be called the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama, now wonderfully named the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, but it was just an ordinary academy when I went. And having qualified there, I taught music in Airdrie, an Airdrie Academy, for a year or two. And then I went off to train for ministry in the Baptist Church. I'd grown up in the Baptist Church. And I studied theology in Zurich. There's a whole story behind that, but I ended up in Zurich studying theology for 5 years there. And then came back to England, to Durham, where I did my PhD at Durham University and was minister in the Baptist Church in Jarrow. And those of you who know your geography will know Jarrow is on Tyneside. And at that time in the 80s, it was through the Thatcher years, and a fascinating job being minister there. Learned a huge amount from being with people there who, many of whom were living in poverty and in a great deal of despair during those years. But they were great years in Jarrow. We then moved to Manchester, and I spent 10 years in Manchester, working in the theological colleges at Luther King House, teaching New Testament and Greek there. And the family grew up there. Jane, many of you will know Jane as well, I'm married to, and she's also a minister, and she went through all of that pilgrimage too and became a Baptist minister. We then moved back to Scotland, and Jane became the principal of the Scottish Church's Open College at that time, and I started to work for the Church of Scotland. I became a Church of Scotland minister, transferred from the Baptist Church, and was in various stages head of vocational guidance, and then head of the ministries department, and finally head of the staff, and in a kind of quasi chief executive role for the church. I retired from that about 2 years ago nearly, largely because I wasn't very well at that point, but then gradually regained health, and I'm now working as chief executive of Richmond's Hope, which is a small charity that does bereavement support for children and young people, and that's a wonderful piece of work, and I'm the chief executive there. Skills I bring to the council, I hope leadership. I had a lot of experience of both servicing committees and chairing committees, of management, of team building, and I hope at some points I bring a little bit of humour as well, because I think that's quite important. And then finally, what am I passionate about? Well, first and foremost, I'm passionate about equality and fairness and justice. Within that, a variety of things, gender equality, racial equality, equality of poverty and wealth. Those are really important things to me, and I know they are to many of us in the community. So I find a lot of common ground with others in that. Something else I'm passionate about Motherwell Football Club. And that's something that's passionate in both senses of the word. I'm passionate in terms of support, and I'm also passionate in terms of suffering, having followed them for 55 years. They've won one trophy in that time, so not a glory hunter. So that's a little bit about me, and we'll move on now, and I'm going to talk to Ron, who will appear on screen. Hi, Ron. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Okay, well, my name is Ron Reid. I live in Chester in the northwest of England, but I was born and brought up in Glasgow. Went to Alan Glen's school, which is now no more, of course, and did my first degree at Glasgow University in natural philosophy. When I was about 21, I moved away to go to the University of Warwick to do my PhD. Subsequently spent a year at the new University of Ulster in Coleraine. It was new then. And then did 5 years postdoc work at Oxford University in a subject that probably most of you haven't heard of, which was looking at surfaces of crystals. I then needed a job. I was getting married and moved up to Chester to work at a government laboratory in Warrington. And from there, I specialized in creating and measuring nothing over my professional life. I worked there until I retired, but shortly before retirement, 5 or 6 years before retirement, I became a non-stipendiary minister in the United Reformed Church, doing my training at Luther King House. When I retired from full-time work, I became a minister part-time in Ellesmere Port, where I worked for about 6 years and then retired. So that's a little bit about me.
Very good, thanks, Ron. What gifts and skills do you bring to the community through the council, do you think?
I've been on many different organizations over the course of my life, and I know a bit about program planning, budget planning, and things like that from my professional life. I was the Secretary General of an international scientific union for about 9 years, which is very interesting, took me all around the world. So I know a bit about governance from that, but I've also been on a number of charities as a trustee. I was the deputy chair for Boys Brigade in England for a number of years. And I've been, as I say, in charities large and small, currently a trustee of a number of charities, including the West Cheshire Food Bank.
Very good, thank you. And what are you passionate about?
Okay, well, over the past few years, I've become more and more passionate about things like food justice, stemming from my interaction with the food bank. And currently in Food Bank, we're working towards phasing out of Food Bank and what can come afterwards. So food justice and things like that have become my most recent passion, if you like. The other one I want to talk about is very much linked to that because I'm passionate about eating, as most of us are, but with the current situation in the country, the pandemic and so on, it's made me realize that I do need to support small local businesses much more than I've perhaps done in the past. So once we're allowed to, my intention is to eat out more in the sort of small coffee shops and local restaurants and so on.
Great, but you haven't eaten your way through the food bank yet?
Not yet, no.
Good. Good, thanks very much, Ron. Good to see you. And next we're going to move to Joe, who was leading worship with me earlier. Joe, tell us a little bit about who you are.
I'm Jo. I was born and brought up in southeast London, where my father was a Baptist minister, and he was minister of a church called the Grove Centre Church. He retired from ministry early, went back to university, and the minister who came to replace him was somebody called Tom Colvin, who introduced me to Iona and took me to Iona when I was 13 with our youth group. And so Iona was then part of my life. But I went to school in southeast London, then I went and did a degree in microbiology, which has been quite useful in a pandemic because I've got a little bit of knowledge, but it's a bit rusty. But soon to married my husband Stuart. We've been married nearly 36 years, and we have 2 grown-up children, one who lives in Oxford, our daughter who lives in Oxford, and our son who lives in Peckham. And I have a granddaughter who's 21 months old, and she's a joy, but we haven't seen her much in pandemic. But my husband is an engineer, and he got involved in working with the disabled people through the university in London, and we found a product that made a very specialised seating system for disabled people, and we moved to Somerset with it to start a little business, which has grown and grown, and it's now we've now got about we've got 8 employees, various engineers, and we manufacture very specialised seating systems for disabled people for the NHS, and we also manufacture a wheelbase. I call it a wheelbase because it doesn't have a seat on it. We make the seat and that goes on the wheelbase, out of stainless steel, and I'm the sort of financial director of that company, and my husband's the technical director. We've just taken on a general manager, so I've got a little bit more time now to do some other things. And when this role of council member came up, I thought, well, that would be interesting to do. So that's a bit. Oh, and also an accredited lay preacher with the United Reformed Church, and have had many years on various committees within the URC.
Thank you. And in the light of that, what skills do you feel that you bring to the council?
Well, I feel a little underqualified actually with all the fantastic people that are on the council. I have run a very successful business for nearly 20 years. I can see my way around a financial spreadsheet. I know how to make money in a business. That doesn't sound quite right, but it's we've been a profitable business, so I do understand that. I've been on various committees in the URC. I've been on the ministries at Tavistock Place. I've chaired our own ministry committee within Southwestern Synod. I've been a treasurer of our local church. So yeah, I think sort of businessy things, although being an accredited lay preacher, I love worship. I love creating worship, and I love new ways of preaching and bringing the word of God to people. So there's that side of things as well.
Great. And what are you passionate about?
Lots of things. Recently, for the past 5 years, my husband and I have built ourselves a brand new house in a little bit of land next to our old house. And we decided we wanted to build it as environmentally friendly as possible. So we have put masses and masses of insulation in it. We've got an air source heat pump. We've got mechanical heat ventilation recovery, solar power. We've got a wildflower meadow outside that we sort of try to keep going for diversity. So I think, yeah, I'm very passionate about low carbon living and what we can bring into our own individual houses to make that more efficient.
Great. That's great. I think you might be having quite a few visitors once the lockdown's over.
Yeah. It's a lovely house to live in, actually. We've been in it a year now, so it's we're just enjoying it.
Well, thanks, Jo. That's great. See you later. We're moving on to David now, to David Hughes. Hi, David. Good to see you.
Hello.
Tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I have the advantage. I and Joyce and I gave a members report last weekend, so a lot of people know quite a lot about where we are in our background. But briefly, I was born and brought up in Glasgow, spent my education years in secondary and early tertiary education in the Scottish Roman Catholic seminaries in Scotland and Rome, before moving on and pursuing a vocation in medicine. And met Joyce while working there, and having married, we then joined together the Iona Community 29 years ago. I've worked as a consultant paediatric nephrologist, quite a small niche specialty, both in Liverpool for 12 years and then back in Glasgow until my retirement a year ago, being involved in developing national services in Scotland, delivering that specialty on an equal basis, access to all across Scotland. I have 2 children, both young adults in these challenging times, and that where I am up to just now is reinventing or rediscovering myself as a retired person in terms of other challenges, which have included the opportunity to become part of the Iona Community Council.
Great. And tell us a little bit about the skills that you're bringing out of all of that.
Well, during my time in sort of medical practice, I got involved in a number of things. As a junior doctor, I was the chairman of the West of Scotland BMA Junior Doctors Committee. As a paediatric nephrologist, I was the president of our National Specialist Association and involved in a major governance review of the Renal Association over a 3-year period there, and then became a trained trustee with Kidney Research UK, a major national charity in research, and involved in governance review there. And so I have had formal training, charity trustee training experience. And I think that one of the important things for me is realizing the governance role that there needs to be in place for a charity working effectively. And hopefully I can bring that experience as well as just my generic experiences to the community.
Great, thank you. Thanks, David. And what are you passionate about?
Well, I'm very passionate about the sort of the quality that people need to have when accessing all sorts of things. Now, clearly that was something that I was able to live out through my work in the health service, but I can see this across the whole of our community with people who are disenfranchised, dispossessed, and those are the sorts of things that both make me angry about it's there and want to do something to try and overcome that.
Yeah, great. Thank you, David. That's great. We'll move on to Grant. Grant's going to appear, I think. Hi, Grant. Good to see you. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
Thank you, Martin. Good morning, everybody. My name is Grant Jarvie. Like Martin, originally from Motherwell, although left Motherwell at an early age, and school days were Edinburgh before going on to university at Exeter, and then moving abroad to Canada for a master's degree and PhD at the University of Leicester. First job was teaching in a high school in West Calder High School, and then moving on to working in university life. I'm an associate member of the Iona Community. My father was an early community member, and Iona and the Iona network, and many of my very, very close friends have come through Iona and the Iona network's been part of my life from an early age. I would like to think if there was an Iona Football Hall of Fame, I might just have squeezed into it because of goals scored in matches against Mull, but that's not to be the case. I suppose nearly all of my working life has been in universities from different levels. Worked my way up through lecturer, senior lecturer. I've held three chairs in 3 different universities. Been a vice principal, been an acting principal. Currently enjoying life at the University of Edinburgh, and but also closely associated with the University of Toronto.
Great. And what skills are you bringing to the council?
Well, again, I'm in awe of the skills of my colleagues round about me, and it's great to be working in such a team. I've had the opportunity, I suppose, over the years to work on a wide range of different boards, and currently work on a few boards. I've chaired university boards. I'm currently, if anybody lives in East Renfrewshire, I'm chair of East Renfrewshire Leisure, Culture and Sport Trust during challenging times, trying to keep facilities open. Doing lots of things in deprived parts of East Renfrewshire, which is incredibly rewarding. I've been vice chair of the National Sports Council during a period when the Commonwealth Games were delivered in Glasgow. People usually stop talking to me when I say I've been on the board, and I'm on the board of the Scottish Football Association. Been an advisor to the Commonwealth Secretariat. And like Martin, a lifelong supporter of Motherwell Football Club, but I'm also a director and trustee with another Scottish Premier Football club.
Great. Thanks, Grant. And what are you passionate about?
Well, I've always been passionate about opening up opportunities wherever I can for people, widening access into education. I've worked in sport nearly all of my life. I've seen it as a fantastic tool and a fantastic resource to reach out to people all over the world and recognize that it's a great platform that you can build other things round about. So passionate about education, passionate about opening up opportunities, passionate about fighting poverty, and passionate about Iona and the work of the Iona community.
Great. Thanks very much. We're going to move on now to Fidge, or Fiona Fidgeon to give her Sunday name. Hi, Fiona.
It to be called Fidge, it's quite fine.
Yeah. Tell us a bit about who you are.
Yeah, well, Fidge might be an interesting place to start. A name I inherited about 6 or 7 years old, which came from my dad, and it's just kind of stayed and stuck, and I quite like it. Somebody once asked me, did I think God called me Fiona or Fidge? And I said Fidge, so there you go. It's just kind of stayed. I live on Teesside, Stockton-on-Tees, with my wife Lynn and our German Shepherd dog Fred. I think most people, when they meet me, say, and how is Fred? I think he's probably the most photographed dog on the planet. There you go. He usually sits outside my window, my door here, and whinges very loudly. But thankfully, you can't hear him at the moment. He's snoozing. I have a background in education, primary school teacher originally, then did a bit of youth work training, and worked for the Church of Scotland on their national board, and I currently work for the Methodist Church. So my background and passion is really in education as a tool for transformation and change. Currently, I have a kind of learning and development role for the Methodist Church, and I've just finished my MA in digital theology at Durham University.
Great. Good. Thank you. And what skills do you bring to the council, Fidge?
Yeah, that's an incredibly good question. I think I need to confess that I'm not a natural committee member. Being in a committee isn't something that naturally sits comfortably with me, but here I am. And so, yeah, I have a variety of kind of leadership skills, which is probably one of the reasons why I've been selected, perhaps. But I think what I bring is perhaps something of a more reflective and creative contribution to the council. I'm quite a strategic thinker, and I think one of my gifts is I'm quite good at seeing what's missing. I'm quite good at seeing the gaps and perhaps doing something about it. For those of you that know the Enneagram, that's a trait of a number 4, doing something about the gaps.
Great, yeah, and we need that. Thank you. That's great. And what are you passionate about?
Well,
2 things.
So say that again.
If you've got 2 things, that would be good. I've been reminded of not.
I could give you 2 things. So for those of you that are on Twitter, I could say I'm passionate about DOTUS. Now, for those of you that don't really know what that is, DOTUS is a hashtag. It's a new hashtag. It's going to be one of my passions, I hope, for the next 4 years, maybe hopefully the next 8 years, but Phyllis might know what I'm talking about. DOTUS stands for Dogs of the United States, and there's going to be 2 German Shepherd dogs in the White House. Woo! We're terribly excited about that. Well, I am terribly excited about that. And my other passion is really about, I guess, music and the arts. I love singing. I used to sing with Loud and Proud, Scotland's LGBT choir, and I currently sing with Northern Proud Voices. Well, I don't currently sing. That's an absolute lie. Haven't met with them for a year, but when we can sing again, singing is one of my wee passions. The arts and creativity, I guess, on a religious side, I suppose I might say one of my passions is around prayer. Prayer is something we don't really talk about an awful lot, and I'm quite interested in that whole kind of life-work balance thing that most of us live our lives a little bit too busy and a bit out of sync. So the kind of slow movement, I guess, is something that I'm trying to embrace a wee bit.
Great, thank you. That's brilliant. We're moving to Nick now. Nick Bowry. Who's there's Nick. Hi, good to see you, Nick.
Hi there, good to see you.
And let's ask you who you are and tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, I was born and brought up in Hertfordshire, a little village called North Mims, not to be confused with South Mims, where the motorway services are on the M25. I worked in HR for, gosh, 38 years. I know, it's hard to believe it, isn't it? I worked for the Medical Research Council in London for 11 years, and then worked at the University of Edinburgh for 18 years. Did a lot of work around change management, leadership skills, equality and diversity. We did some of the first awards for getting women into senior positions in science, technology, engineering and maths. A lot of work on that, great resistance from some of my academic colleagues. Any of you that know Edinburgh, I used to live at the top of Liberton Bray, and I used to cycle home. Most days I could cycle up that hill like a breeze. The academics got right under my skin so much. So most days that was quite easy. Yeah, what else is there about me? For 9 years, I was a warden for students at Pollock Halls as well, University of Edinburgh's Halls of Residence for first year students. Not just that if it kept me young, sleep deprived or what, but it was great fun doing it. Really enjoyed doing that. When I left university, I worked for Bethany Christian Trust for 3 years, for them doing an HR job, then jumped ship a bit and then worked for 3 years for a nursing home, a single nursing home charity. And I learned an awful lot about dementia care during that time. Ended up training all the care assistants in how to do that and how to do building design for people with dementia, which was fascinating. And then my final year in HR, I worked for the SQA, but the Scottish Qualifications Agency. But actually, I only worked for them for a day and a bit a week. They then seconded me to work for 3.5 days a week for the Scottish Council for Further and Higher Education, which is the bit of the government that dishes out funding to the universities and colleges in Scotland. What else is there? I've got 2 daughters, Lorna and Heather. Most of you know, well, some of you may know Lorna. She was a volunteer, and Iona in probably 2008-9, then a GA for a year, then she was a housekeeper for a year. So it's Lorna that introduced me to Iona Community. She went to the MAC when she was 14, I guess, with the school at Pennycook High School. So you can blame her for my association with the Iona Community, really. Yeah, and I'm currently, I got ordained in 2016 into the Scottish Episcopal Church, served my curacy in Aberdeen for 3 years in an area of quite high multiple deprivation. And that really gave me a real insight into how people struggle. Aberdeen's always thought of as an oil-rich town, but there's a massive difference in parts of the city between the haves and the have-nots. And working with people who didn't have much and struggled every day was really illuminating for me, but wonderful people. And then last October, I moved to here. Here for me is Pennycook, just south of Edinburgh, where I've had the fancy title of Rector of the Link Charge of St James the Less Pennycook and St Mungo's West Linton. And that's about me.
Thank you. And what skills are you bringing to the council, Nick?
Yeah, well, I guess I've done years of change management. When I went to university, I used to lead and really be the internal consultant for change management. So I've done a lot of that. I've been a company secretary of a charity in Edinburgh for 9 years. They're at Little Centre. So sat on many committees there, but also on many university committees. The university is driven by committees. I've got a strong sense of equality, diversity. I want to ensure that that's a good stream of things. And in more recent years, I've got much involved in strengths-based approach to change. So looking for what's wrong, not what's strong, not what's wrong, and working from that base. So I've got years of HR experience, and also I do quite a lot of work with safeguarding, and on the CLC, I'll take the lead on safeguarding for the community.
Okay, thank you. And what are you passionate about?
It's funny, I asked one member of my congregation the other day, she said, what aren't you passionate about? So it's a bit hard to answer, but I think especially formed by my sense of sort of equality, diversity work I did at university, then working in a poor area in Aberdeen, that whole sense of injustice, the social injustice of people struggling every day, the benefits system, universal credit, food banks, it was just horrendous to see how people lived there and the struggles they had. So there is a real sense of just inequality and injustice in society. And I have 2 other passions. One of them, it's not Motherwell, I'm afraid. I break Arsenal since I was born in that part of the world. Arsenal were the team I had support. Both my parents supported them. I didn't have any choice. Barnet or Watford might have been a bit closer, but Arsenal it's always been for me. And also walking El Camino. I've walked the Camino in Spain 5 times now. And after I left work, I took 3 months off before my ordination. And I spent 5 weeks walking. I walked from Santander, where my bank is, on the north coast of Spain into Santiago, then out to Finisterre and to Murcia, where if you've seen the film The Way, you'll know where that is, where the ashes are cast into the ocean. Yeah.
Very good, very good. You didn't do that in an Arsenal strip, did you?
No.
Not near Santander. Good, thanks, Nick. Great to see you. And we're moving on to Walter now. Walter Dunlop. Hi, Walter. Good to see you. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Right, I'm a buddy from Paisley. Anybody who comes from Scotland will know what that means. I'm not a St Mirren supporter, so there we are. That's one sin I've not taken back. But you can tell from my accent, I was actually born in Darlington many years before. Professionally, I'm a quantity surveyor and went through the ranks of working within private practice and then into the big bad world of contracting. I was a contractor's quantity surveyor, ending up as a director with a civil engineering company. Before, when we were living in Stornoway at the time, I got the calling, in a sense, to become a mission partner for the Church of Scotland. Left Stornoway and travelled to Malawi to join the ecumenical church organisation Christian Service Committee. Tom Colvin's name was mentioned earlier on. Tom initiated this within Malawi. So I headed up the design and building department. We were building schools and hospitals, bridges and so on for churches and throughout the country. We moved from Malawi 7 years later to Israel, Palestine. We were looking after the church's property in Israel. That was 7 years again. We left Malawi and Israel in just after the Gulf War, 93, to take up the position of the first support services manager for the Iona Community. And that was an interesting experience, which has carried me forward into today, in fact. I left there in 98 to take up a position within the church offices in Edinburgh as the Africa Secretary, Sub-Saharan Africa Secretary for the Church of Scotland, which was fascinating, with partnerships throughout Southern Africa that we have allowed me the privilege of travelling throughout Africa, and that was exciting. But then that was curtailed because I was asked to move to Middle East Secretary again within the church. At that time, a very controversial project was taking place within Tiberias, the building of a £10 million hotel, which is still there today, and I managed that until I retired in 95. 2009. And since then, I've had various involvements, Scotland-Malawi partnership, for example, and also a trustee with Hadil, many of you know, in Edinburgh. So yeah, that's my background. Currently trying to retire and gradually going in that direction. As for what do I bring? Well, I suppose having had that experience, sports services manager, that's a background that I can take back a few years if my memory doesn't fail me on many occasions. So I can bring that. I can bring the experience of years of management and also construction experience.
Yeah, great. And I think we've all seen, Walter, the work that you've done over the last, well, I don't know how many years, but certainly the last 2 or 3 years in terms of the Abbey.
7 years.
Yeah, yes, aye. It's in a very concentrated way, you and Raymond together, and we're all very grateful for that. Thank you. What are you passionate about?
Yeah, I suppose not unsurprisingly passionate about issues of justice, peace and equality in Palestine and Israel and also in Malawi. Yeah, that's something I keep a hold of and try to keep up with all the issues that are around there.
Yeah.
I have another passion, which is a recent passion, a current passion. It's about foxes. Especially at 3 o'clock in the morning, when the fox who's found a corner in our garden decides to howl. I didn't know a fox barked, and it's a loud bark. So getting up, well, my wife doesn't hear it. She's hard of hearing, but I certainly do. And so that's a passion at the moment, to get up in the morning. I suppose it's kind of inverted passion, if you like. But that is something I go to bed at night wondering at what time I'm going to be wakened up in the middle of the day, middle of the night.
We'll not ask what steps you're taking to get rid of it.
No, please don't.
Thanks, Walter. That's great. Good to see you. And finally, Phyllis has joined us from the States. Good early morning, Phyllis. What on earth time is it with you?
It is 20 of 6.
Oh.
So you can see out the doors here, it's still pitch black here.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
You've picked up the format of what we're doing, and if you could tell us a little bit about who you are, first of all.
I'd be glad to. I live in Pemaquid Harbor, Maine with my husband, Bobby. My education is, I have a degree in psychology, and I started out working in a public relations agency in New York City, and then moved on, and my training and my experience kind of morphed from that to general marketing, to strategic planning, and then to helping nonprofit organizations strategize for and then conduct major capital appeals. I've been an associate for 8 years now. That started when my husband and Bobby and I retired in 2012, and Jim Black brought us to the Iona Abbey so that we could be residential volleys for several months. And I was hooked from then on. John and Molly Harvey introduced me to Peter McDonald and to Robert Swinfen, and that was the start of my involvement in the Abbey Capital Appeal back in December of 2012. Let's see. I guess I think that's
great. Thank you, and we're very, very grateful to you for all the work that you've done on the Capital Appeal, which has been a great success. Thank you. Tell us a little bit about the skills that you're bringing then to the council.
Well, I think the skills are pretty much the strategic planning and the Capital Appeal fundraising experience, because I know that this is not the last time, the Abbey is not the last time you're going to be needing that kind of information. So I will be glad to do that. I retired in 2012, only in the sense of earning income.
Yeah, great. Well, it's great to have you with us. And what are you passionate about? Well,
I'm passionate about my family. I came to it late. I married into this amazing Ives family at age 60, and from having no children to having 3 amazing children and their spouses and 5 incredible grandchildren who, although I am not genetically tied to them, they are definitely my grandchildren. I adore them. They're the life of life. The other passion, that answer would have been different if you had asked me that about a month ago. But given the last 4 weeks or so, especially with the intensity of what's been going on in the United States, I've got to say political justice.
Yeah, we're very much with you on that.
Thank you.
You are American people are very much in our hearts and prayers at this time.
Thank you. We need them.
Yeah, thank you. Well, it's great to have you here, and thanks so much for getting up early and joining us at this time of the morning for you. It's mid-morning for us. Thanks again, Phil. It's good to see you. Well, folks, that's 9 of our trustees. There are 3 others, Alison Jackson, Amanda Taylor-Aiken and Brian Evans. They're not able to be with us today, but I hope that's given you a bit of a flavour of the membership of the council. And I have to say, it's an enormous privilege to be convening a group of people with the gifts and skills that you've been hearing about today, and the 3 others would have added to that as well. We are in challenging times as a community. I think we all know that. We're in very challenging times, but I'm encouraged that we have the quality of people that we do, offering leadership within the committee and also in our staff group, which is a terrific staff group, particularly Ruth and Sarah, who are with us today. It's a great privilege to be working with them. So thank you for that. We're a bit behind time, but I think it was important to do that. And we're going to move now to the second part of our session today, which is thinking a bit about where we're going as a community, articulating our vision, we've called it. And we're going to split up into small groups. There's about 80 people around, and there are going to be 11 groups. So you'll be in roughly 7 or 8 groups of 7 or 8. And we're going to take about 20 minutes.
Martin, I think 15.
15, right. Ruth tells me 15 minutes. We'll take in our groups just to have an opportunity to hear a bit about where we are with strategic planning, articulating vision, and to ask you to get engaged a little bit in that process now. So we're going off to groups now, and I hope you are able to pitch into those and enjoy that. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. I think, are we all back? And Martin, are we handing over to the next session now?
Yes, that's great. Just thank you to everyone for participating in that. We've gathered notes together, and we'll be sharing those. That's very helpful. Thank you. Over to you, Ruth.
So can I just say a huge thank you to Martin and to Council. What a remarkable introduction to a remarkable group of people, and you haven't even heard from everybody yet. And thank you to everyone for participating in those wee groups. We'll collect that wisdom. Now is just a chance for a brief update. Sarah and I introduced ourselves to you at the beginning of Community Month, but now the 2 committees are going to, which we both serve, are going to share a little bit of update about the state of play today. So I'm going to hand over to Walter and Sarah to share with you a bit about the Community Resources Committee. Alison Jackson, who is the convener, is not here today, so Walter is stepping in for her.
You're mute.
Sorry. I take it that okay.
Yep.
Okay. Resource Committee. I'm assuming that we all know that the Community Resource Committee, its purpose and its remit. I mean, I think it's important that we understand that. Now it's got financial responsibilities, staffing responsibilities, and so on. I'm going to talk a little about the financial position as we see the situation at the moment, and that we are in a situation now which we discovered at the last annual general meeting with the accounts come in, the statement and the accounts and our financial situation. I don't think it's unreasonable to understand that where this has come from in many ways. We've had 3 seasons of an abbey closure. I mean, that essentially has meant that we've had no income for three years, which, if the gross income over the 3 years would have amounted to somewhere about £900,000, which is a substantial amount of money in anybody's language. On top of that, we've paid our rent for 3 years. So in terms of our position financially as such, that we are having to, in a sense, we're in a recovery, a survival mode here at the moment. And over the last few months, the council and in its entirety, that CRC and the CLC, we have spent a lot of time looking through at where we should be looking in terms of the savings, but also looking at how we can increase our income. In great detail, there's nothing off the table in our budget here as we look at this in detail, and it's the detail that we are concerned about. However, I think there's as we look at all of as we look at the financial position of the community, I think it's important to understand that there is potential here, because what it means by having a close examination of the situation, it allows us to look at detail. Why do we do this? Are there other ways in which we can be looking at our programs? Are there other ways in which we can achieve what we're trying to achieve, you know, by looking at different strategies? Because we need to get down to detail, and the detail starts off with the financial situation and so on. Now, as we do that, it exposes us to consider other ways of doing so. There are real opportunities here as we look into 2021. Clearly, even in 2021, COVID is still with us. We have no idea what's going to happen in terms of the program next year. We certainly hope that the situation is relieved to the extent that we can actually have guests on Iona, and that the bookshop itself can increase its sales and so on. So we're really looking at a situation here now where the priority here is for the council, for the community, to establish not just its budget for 2021, but also to establish what it's going to be doing over the next year to sustain itself through the next year, so that we can see ourselves forward beyond 2021. Now, I'm going to hand over to Sarah here at this point, just looking at the good news that we've not shut ourselves off. There are new programs, there are new ways of doing things, there are new opportunities. So I'm going to ask Sarah if she would take over at this point.
Yes, I think I would just reiterate what Walter has said, that we are entering 2021 like every organisation in the world, with huge uncertainty and with no guarantees at all that we will survive financially in 2021, that all over the world organisations are in that situation, and that, as Walter said, we are going into 2021 with the Abbey having been closed for 3 years. Thanks to Walter and to Raymond keeping a really good grip on the management of the build at the Abbey, we've managed to do all of that and absorb those costs within the incredible work of the Capital Appeal team, who've done a brilliant job. But we've managed to deliver more with the same amount of money, which the Capital Appeal team have done. And they've even managed to exceed the target that they were set. The incredible £3.7 million target was exceeded, but that has been able to help us absorb the extra costs that have come from COVID. So as we go into 2021, we're beginning a really exciting process of looking at all the activities that we do and what are the absolutely most important ones that we must get done by March, by the end of the summer, by the end of the year. How do we galvanize the team, the staff team that we have, but also the membership? And I think the thing that's becoming clearest to me is that the membership, the community, the whole community is really vital, and that there are green shoots of inspiration and activity and relevance and ways of engaging with all of the world that we are currently living in, that the interests and concerns of the Iona community have never been more relevant, that as we look at global warming and injustice and communities pitting against one another, the message of the Iona community is needed now more than ever, and that the activities that are springing up within the community are the things that people need. There is a need for it. So I think that I will now pass over to the CLC, because CRC will be looking at what is it that the community life is demanding that we do, and those will be the priorities that we work to serve. So as a handover, I'm handing over, wanting to make sure that people understand the seriousness of the financial situation that we enter 2021. This is tough. There are going to be tough decisions that we need to make, tough questions that we must ask ourselves. But I do think that by listening to where the community is seeing growth and seeing opportunity and seeing need, that will provide us with the way through. We are in a tough place, but we can do it. And at that point, I will hand over to CLC to explain some of the programme ideas that are emerging that must, I think, be the priority for where we put our resources into the coming year.
Thanks so much, Sarah and Walter. Tremendous context. And I'm going to hand over to Fidge, the co-convener of the CLC Community Life Committee. And over to you, Fidge.
Thanks, Ruth. Thank you, Sarah and Walter. So, Community Life Committee. I love this name. Partly I love it because in the very Ignatian tradition, what is it that is life-giving for us? And that might be a really good thing for you to have a ponder on and think about just for a second. What is life-giving for you in the context of your membership of the community? And so the CLC gatherings are really about looking at our sense of the movement. Who are we? What are we in the movement? We've already sent out an email to family group conveners reflecting on kind of how we actually implement some of the membership ideas and things that are floating around at the moment. How do we practically do that? Movement also includes the kind of common concern networks and our regional programs, all of those things. And I think we need to recognize, and of course we all do recognize, but we need to name that we are now a very different membership community to what we were 6 months ago. This whole sense that here we are, 100 of us, 80 of us or whatever, gathered on Zoom, and we're not all traveling all over the country. And we have Phyllis with us from the States. You know, the Tuesday evening Zoom things and everything that we have done in Community Month has really enabled us to develop a sense of being a global community. What does that mean for us in terms of our membership? And I think we need to reflect that actually as a community, we are now a very different community in terms of members, associates, friends, or hangers-on, or people that are just interested in who we are and what we're doing than we were 6 months ago. We cover all the youth area. Youth is part of our charitable status. And this is not just about we want young people part of us so that we survive. Actually, don't start me now, but I will talk quite a bit on the wisdom of our elders. But we want young people to be part of our decision-making processes. We want young people to be part of us as a community, not because of the survival of the Iona community, but because we believe God speaks through our children and through our young people, and that we need to maybe listen to that. And what does it also mean to be an intergenerational community? We know that that relationship between children and grandparents is a really strong kind of connection. How do we embed that in the life of our community to be an intergenerational community? We talked a little bit about in our small group, and yesterday we heard Rowan Williams talk about, I suppose, the whole sense of communication, that the Iona community has this reputation. How do we communicate that out to the world, who we are and what we are, and where do we want to communicate that to? But the programme is also one of the big areas that we are looking at. I'm going to ask Ruth to talk about the kind of 5 programme streams that we're thinking about and developing, as well as, and she'll talk a bit more later on this morning about how we embed those into the life of the community in the next sort of 6 months. So 5 programme streams we're looking at. Over to you, Ruth.
So I'm just going to mention at the top 2 or 3, which we've mentioned before. And I guess the thing to say about programme is it's all in the context of survive and regroup and stabilise. And we've got so much output. There is so much already going on within our community life. So the commitment to making our centres accessible to a whole range of people, including those who've been locked in and locked down during lockdown, will be a major priority in 2021 as we have space to accommodate people. And we will make sure that our spaces go as much as we're able to people who otherwise are excluded. So that's our unlocked programme. And the Iona Way is just a neat way of talking about all the digital opportunities we have to make our resources available in useful and radical and relevant packages for ourselves and the world. And in a sense, the sessions that we've recorded from Community Month are a beginning on that journey, how we then use this material, these conversation starters, to engage with the things that matter for the people who matter in the world. So those are just 2 examples of some of our programme development. We're also looking at how we can engage more fully with COP26 and the whole year of 2021 that's taking us up to that large event in Glasgow, and how we can engage through our Common Concern network on the environment with that stream. And Joe will say a bit more about that in a moment. So there are other threads, but I guess following on from what Sarah and Walter said and what the context in which Fidge placed the programme, this is about taking what's the best of the community and promoting it and ensuring that it's relevant and radical for not just us, but for the whole world. So I think that's possibly enough to say it right now. We'll have more tidbits in a moment from others who will say a bit more about specific things that are coming up in 2021. Fidge?
I'm not quite sure what happens now. Martin?
Well, no, so there we are. I think at that point, we will say farewell to this little roundup of the committees. If you have any further thoughts about the committee work and how the committees operate, please contact Sarah or myself. Sarah looks after the Community Resources Committee and I support the Community Life Committee. So yeah, we're aware that it's a very brief little tidbit, but we wanted just to give you a sense that we're on the way to something really quite powerful, but we're also in a very, very severe situation financially, and survival is the key word for 2021. So I think it's now over to me to introduce a few thoughts for the future. And I'm so delighted we've got a couple of really exciting things to come and to share with you, including a delightful guest from one of our colleague communities. But before I introduce them, I just wanted to say a couple of words before we turn our attention to 2021 and to all that is going to bring, and also as we look at the new programs that are going to develop in 2021. I wanted to say a word about healing and reconciliation. So this is just a couple of sentences really. This is a theme that I've been reflecting on in preparation for the Dennis Duncan lecture, which was on Monday, but it's a theme that's dear to my heart, healing and reconciliation. And it's a theme, I guess, that's been a bit of a playlist, if you like, in the background of our community life for the last 3 or 4 years. As a community, we've had our share of grief, of frustration, of fear, of pain, and even of trauma, you could say. From the turmoil of our leadership crisis to the sudden deaths of Graham and Peter, not to mention the loss of dear friends such as Runa and others. All of these griefs and angsts have been compounded by the onset of COVID, which has brought so much additional stress and anxiety. And I should say that I know that for many people, access to Community Month has not just been limited because of technology, but many of our members are working flat out to help the survival of other charities around this country and these islands. So many people are working extremely hard beyond any kind of feasible physical limit to help lots of good work survive in this world. So the context and the anxiety that has been compounded by COVID. Our shared grief also has been compounded by the tentative opening, first of all, and then the really sad closing of our beautiful new Abbey. Camas had a short season, but it wasn't like Tom and the team had imagined it would be. Many of us have had limited access to the islands of Mull and Iona. There have been staff redundancies, which were not easy. We don't know what the future will hold. We don't know how our finances will look in 2021. And I guess all I want to say is that as we look to the future, along with Council, Sarah and I are committed to working through some of this grief and this shared trauma with us as a whole community. We don't yet know how, but we will, we won't ignore it. So I guess it's really important for me to say that to all of you as we bring this community month to a close. And actually right now, as we turn our attention to some really tremendous pieces of work that are coming. So the ongoing work that will be there for us all is, I want just to remind you all that every week, Katrina and the team from Iona post a version of the Service of Prayers for Healing online. It is getting a large following online, and it's there for all of us. Andrew Simon and his team continue to provide fresh worship material on a daily basis that's available online in line with the Iona Abbey worship at 9 o'clock every morning. So we can all join in with a regular pattern and rhythm of worship in community. So I just want to acknowledge these ongoing pieces of work and pay a huge tribute to Andrew and his team and to Katrina and her team for making this happen. Then we have a number of events coming up, and I am delighted to welcome to share the screen with me Padraig O'Tuama from the Iona Community. Padraig, come into the room.
Hi Ruth, and hi everybody. It's so nice to be with you.
Spotlight Padraig.
Oh.
And you can take me away for a bit, definitely. Hooray! Padraig, it's great to have you here. We began this community month with Alex and two Alexes, one from Corrymeela, welcoming and being part of our community here. It's great to have you here. Tell us a bit about what's happening in Advent.
So we have a four event series happening over the Sunday evenings of Advent at 5:30 p.m. on the Zooms. And we will be exploring the theme of borders through the lens of the Book of Ruth. It's been a big focus of us here in the last number of years, not only because of Brexit, but because 2021 is the centenary of the partition of Ireland. And as you'll know, the partition of Ireland is really at the heart of what has led to a troubled century. And so we are exploring what the story of a widowed, displaced woman crossing a border and really her legal status and what that story speaks to us about contemporary readings of law, which are often seen to be brutal. But really one of the central messages of the Book of Ruth is that if a law can't be interpreted through the lens of kindness, then the law is a failure and the law needs to change. It's an extraordinary legal book. And so we're going to be looking at that over 4 sessions. I worked on this with my beloved colleague and friend, Glenn Jordan, who lots of us knew. And so he died very suddenly in this year of grief for all of us, I know. And so, so everything that we do in terms of this project is in homage and honor of his great humor and insight as well.
Padraig, tremendous. Thank you so much. Many of us knew and loved Glenn and are with you in that grief. So folks, sign up for the the Book of Ruth and Belonging. The link to sign up was in the week 4 email. And if you've not got that, get back to me and I will, well, you must have it because you're here. So have a good look, but you don't get to go unless you sign up. So please do use that link to sign up and then you'll get the link to go to the course. And Padraig, how fantastic to have you with us. Don't you love Zoom for this kind of thing?
Oh yeah. It's a joy. I mean, I'll say, I think we have about 250 people signed up already. And while we are finding things strange in terms of, you know, it's a weird year for community. We're sitting at our desks looking at our screens. There are ways in which people for whom distance would keep us away. And so I wish you all the best as you look at new forms of belonging as well, trying to cope with all that this brings and some of what this opens.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Great. Well, we're going to move on now, and I'm going to ask Richard Sharples to say a few words about the Praying the Psalms course, which is coming in January and February. Richard. You're muted, Richard.
Richard.
Yes, I think for me and for many other people, the Psalms and praying the Psalms are one of the things that gives me life and sustains me in my life as a disciple of Jesus. So the course is essentially an invitation for you to make a journey through the whole book of Psalms, which we don't often do. Well, perhaps you've never done that, but we pick and choose, and there are good reasons for doing that. And I'm not knocking that approach, but this is an opportunity to make a pilgrimage through the whole 150 Psalms, and to do that in the company of other pilgrims, and to do that by gathering together on 8 successive Thursday evenings. One starts it off, one finishes it off, but the reading and praying scheme really requires of you to kind of build that into your daily lives for that period of 50 days, a significant period. And we meet on those 8 Thursday evenings. It'll be the Psalms that we've got to, that we reflect upon and read together. There's a companion gospel passage each week, so that we're very intentionally reading them in the light and the spirit of Jesus. And this will be the 3rd run. So it's something that I felt, led to in those early times of lockdown, but I do strongly feel that the Psalms are a precious resource that we shouldn't just come into ownership ourselves of them, but we should really seriously want to try and commend to others, because they are our practice, our spiritual practice. So I could go on at length, but join us on Thursdays from January, whatever it is, and the link is in the community month thing, and Isabel will help to register and administer that.
And I think, Richard, it's Wednesdays.
It is, you're quite right.
So just that will help you all remember, it is not Thursdays, it's Wednesdays from the 6th of January, 7:30 through to the 24th of February. So, and Isabel Sarl, thank you so much. Isabel has offered to be the admin point for this course. So, and her email address is on the members website, but it's also in the week 4 blurb. So Wednesdays, 8 weeks with Richard and the Psalms. What could be better? Thank you so much, Richard. Don't go away, Richard, because you've also got something to share with us. And Annie also, do you want to spotlight yourself about the young adult pilgrimage, just to give folk a flavour of what's coming in the summer?
Hi, yes. There is an opportunity to journey from Glasgow to Iona next June. We'll leave Glasgow on the 9th of June. Can you hear my dog? Yeah. On St. Columba's Day, and journey up to Iona via places that are significant to the community. If Paddy's really annoying, I can do this once he's stopped barking.
I think is Paddy going to be sorted out by Richard? It doesn't. I think carry on, Annie. Carry on.
I'm sorry.
Fine, it's fine.
So yeah, we'll travel through places that are significant to the community, including Faslane and Camas. And we hope to learn about the history and work of the community, as well as learn from and about our fellow pilgrims whilst journeying in and building community together. The pilgrimage is primarily for young adults, but I'm super keen for over 30s to travel with us too, to share and learn wisdom and stories. And we're also hoping to be joined by some people from Coromila to hear about them and our shared but different histories. We'll arrive on Iona on the 19th of June, I think, and have the Sunday on the island before all dispersing on the Monday. And people are welcome to join us for as much or as little as they wish. And we'll be asking family groups to contribute financially to kind of sponsor young adults so we can keep the cost down. So please do that. And please share this with any young adults you know who might be interested. There's a poster and an information sheet that we can send out. And I'm really excited. I think it's going to be really great. So fingers crossed that it can happen. And if you'd like more information, get in touch with me or Dad, or email the young adults group email, which is yag@iona.org.uk. Thank you, and sorry about the dog.
Great to have Fred or Paddy or whoever else dogs are around. It's wonderful. And thank you, Annie. We're keeping our fingers crossed that these events can go ahead. And we'll keep you posted, and we will send out all the information, including the poster and the sign-up details for that. Thank you so much. I wonder if Joe, do you want to come and say a little bit about any programme plans that the Wild Goose Resource Group has for this next little period?
Hi everyone, just a couple of things really at this stage. Yes, with the big climate conference coming to Glasgow next year, we are in the process already of preparing in partnership with Christian Aid Scotland some materials for use in groups and families, both outdoor and indoor resources. So that conversation and work has begun. And also Columba Fest next year, we are hoping something will happen. The Columba Fest steering group have yet to convene. We'll be meeting on Zoom, obviously, in a couple of weeks' time. So I don't want to preempt too much of what the whole group might decide, but we are still hoping, I think, that it will be in June, and we are hoping that it will be physical, depending on what we're allowed to do with gatherings by that stage. But we still hope that even if it's not a huge gathering, there'll still be ways to make it physical and make an impact. So we'll see what comes of the discussions, but we're certainly hoping that something will be going ahead. Thanks.
Thanks, Jo, and we're delighted that you and John are leading our closing celebrations tomorrow, so we'll see more of you tomorrow. And thanks for all that you're doing with the Glasgow University course that I think is now finished, but seems to go well. Not yet, still going, great. Okay, we're going to move. Fidge, do you want to say a little bit about Divine Online?
Well, we only came up with this title. Well, we've came up with this title yesterday, and we only talked about what that might look like yesterday as well. So it'll be a very short thing. But I've, as you know, I've just said to you, I've been studying the sort of digital, and I'm kind of developing some workshops online. Oh, that's Fred. Sorry, you're not the only one, Annie. About what is the digital doing to us as human beings? What is the digital? Where do we find God digitally? I'm doing a session on Tuesday. Some of you have signed up for on hybrid kind of church. What does that look like? I'm doing some stuff around prayer online. So I'm wondering whether any of that might be interesting for folks. If I was to do once a month or something kind of session for us to just think about the whole kind of digital God, prayer, spirituality, evangelism, any of those kind of things online. And we're still having conversations about what that might look like and how often we do it. But look out for that.
So just a flavour, folks, of some of the things that are happening online. Folks are interested, that's great. We'll send out more. I'm going to hand over to Martin to finish off in a second, but before I do, and I apologise that we're running over, I just want to bring Tom Wardle from Camus and Katrina Robertson from Iona onto the screen for them to say a little bit at this stage in our life about how the programme for 2021 is shaping up our island centres. So Tom, do you want to say a word from Camus about how things are looking for 2021 in terms of your programme?
Yeah, sure. Just a brief update then. I guess we're hoping, that we're going to be able to be as open as we can. Obviously, seeing what restrictions will be in place at the time, but we've taken a good number of bookings for next year from groups, slightly smaller numbers. And we'll see how things progress, and hopefully we'll be able to accommodate as many as we can. And then once we've had final confirmation from those guys by the end of the month, then we'll be putting out some open weeks to fill in some of the gaps in the season. And if any of you guys are interested in visiting Camus next year, then please keep your eyes open for that. That'll be up on the website and the social media pages in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Tom. And I know that the video of your wee boys making lemon cake has gone kind of viral. So thank you, and thank them for their willingness to be filmed and for the cake. It's fantastic.
I think they got their reward in the cake there. They were probably pretty happy with that.
And talking of cake, Anya's video of making bread on Iona has, I think, topped 700 views, which is remarkable. So Katrina, over to you for a little word about 2021 and how that looks from your perspective on Iona in the Abbey. You're muted still, Katrina.
Very exciting. We're looking forward, it's great to see Annie on the screen and welcoming her and as many dogs as she would like. But don't tell anybody, Annie, don't tell anyone. So we're not sure how many people we're actually going to be able to have in person in the Abbey at the moment, but we're not expecting to be a full house. So we're looking at other ways that people can be part of our community, join our community life, whether that's the worship, and I think there's a lot of thinking going on, not just what Fidge was saying, but a lot of thinking about do we want to go back to the church that we left in March? You know, there's a lot there. All the things that people love about Iona and just feel a connection to, whether that's environmental stuff. We were all praying this morning, I think, in the cycle of prayer for environmental justice and for COP26 and all this, those kinds of things. And something about really living community, actually doing community, living it, not just talking about it or saying it's a good thing, but actually doing it. So we're thinking, how do we involve people online, not just endless Zooms, but how do we, in a smart and canny way, involve people who may be living anywhere in the world into the life of our 6-day weeks when people are staying with us in person? And how do we build trust? How do we encourage love? How do we love each other over the airwaves? It's, you know, and we're just all beginning with this. How do we do this? And there'll be experiments and things that work well, things that could do better. So we're looking at a more of a blended 2021 to experiment with a few things and to allow people, as they do normally, to come to the Abbey. They have an opportunity to live in community, to learn, to open themselves up, to make themselves vulnerable, to get to know folk, to do all that. And then they leave and they go back to their communities and their homes, and then they can be salt and light and rebuild community, renew worship and all those things when they go back to their homes or go on to whatever they're going to. So we're hoping to do that as much as we can do in person. But I think there's loads and loads of fantastic ways that we're going to be able to do that online as well. So we don't know what's going to happen, but we've got an amazing team here who've been really on a roller coaster all this year. And we're really looking forward to whatever comes in 2021.
So thank you, Katrina. I think Canny and Smart is a great title for either a book or a course or something or a program. And you can see the challenges with the internet. You know, sometimes internet isn't brilliant on Iona, so it makes it much more tricky to do this kind of stuff online. But we are with you both and with all your teams at Camas and on Iona, as much as we can in person when we're allowed, but 125, 50, 195% all the time online. Folks, thank you so much. I apologize again that we've run over. I'm going to hand over to Martin to close this session. And the final word for me is to remember tonight the authors session with Neil Painter. If you've got any questions for the authors, ping them to Neil. And then tomorrow we have our final session with Craig and the closing celebration with Joe and John. Martin, over to you.
Thank you, Ruth. I want to thank everybody for giving up a couple of hours on a Saturday morning to be with us. It's been really good to see you all and to engage in conversation. I know the council will find it very useful as we draw together all the feedback that we've had already. I've sent a wee note saying if you've any more feedback you'd like to give us about any aspect of what we've done this morning, then please do email me. That would be great. Both Ruth and Sarah have very, very busy email boxes, and I'm very happy to receive the feedback from today so we can process all of that. Thank you. A final word of thanks. We've a couple of sessions left to go, as Ruth has said, tonight and tomorrow evening. But I want to say a special word of thanks to Ruth on all our behalf for the work and the thought that was gone into this month. It's been a real achievement, done at virtually no notice, 2 or 3 weeks. She's pulled together a program. Lots of other people have been involved. I know that, but without Ruth's leadership and inspiration, it wouldn't have happened. And it's been a great thing for us, whatever else. So thank you very much, Ruth, for all of that. And so I want to just draw this session to a formal close now with a word of blessing. So go in peace to serve God in the world, and know that God goes with us, Creator, Christ, and Spirit. Amen.